Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're stepping into, well, a bit of a shadowy world looking at Australia's own secret intelligence service.
That's right, ASIS, the Australian Secret Intelligence Service.
And we've got a pretty comprehensive overview doc to guide us. Our mission really is to unpack what ASIS actually does, look at the big moments in its history, and track how it went from total secret to, well, something we actually know exists.
Exactly. It's quite a journey with some surprising twists.
Okay, let's jump in. May 13th, 1952. That's the start date.
Yep. Set up by Prime Minister Menzies using executive power. No big public announcement.
Just an order under Section 61 of the Constitution,
Right.
and the first boss was Alfred Deakin Brooks.
A name maybe not everyone knows. And the key thing here is just how secret it all was.
Right. I mean, secret even within large parts of the government, let alone from the public.
For decades. It wasn't really until 1972 that the lid started to come off. That level of initial secrecy is pretty fundamental to the whole story.
Hard to picture now, an agency operating completely under the radar for so long. And it wasn't created in a vacuum, was it? It had a template.
No, definitely not. It was very much modeled on Britain's MI6.
Ah, the classic model.
Yeah, there's even a reference to it being called MO9 internally at one point, echoing that British structure.
So in those early secret years,
Yeah.
what was the job description?
Well, the 1954 charter gives us the basics. It says, to obtain and distribute secret intelligence and to plan for and conduct special operations as may be required.
Okay, intelligence gathering, special ops. But crucially, outside Australia, right?
It's absolutely explicit. This was always meant to be foreign intelligence, not domestic.
That's a key distinction.
It really is. And those special operations, what does that actually mean?
Well, a directive in 1958 added something interesting. Special political action.
Which sounds a bit more proactive than just collecting info.
Yeah, it suggests maybe trying to influence events, not just report on them. And importantly, it reported to the Minister for External Affairs, now Foreign Affairs, not Defense.
Right, which probably shaped its focus.
So the secrecy held firm until 72. What happened then? Did some big operation get blown?
Actually, no. It was closer to home. The Daily Telegraph published a story
About what?
about ASIS recruiting spies from Australian universities.
Wow.
Yeah, recruiting students for espionage work in Asia. That certainly got people talking.
I bet that must have been a bombshell.
Definitely.
Ugh.
Suddenly, this unknown agency was front-page news. And it didn't stop there.
No.
The Australian Financial Review followed up with a deeper piece. They pointed out ASIS was meant to collect facts, not advise on policy.
Ah, the gatherer versus analyzer distinction.
Exactly. Though the article did admit those lines could get blurry, which, is often the case with intelligence agencies, that tension between providing info and influencing decisions.
Sure. So the secret's out. How did the government react officially?
Well, in 1977, there was a ministerial statement trying to define its function, obtaining foreign intelligence to protect or promote Australian interests. Pretty broad. But the really big step was Prime Minister Whitlam setting up the first Hope Royal Commission in 1974.
A royal commission. That signals they took it seriously.
Oh, absolutely. And based on that commission's findings, Prime Minister Fraser formally announced ASIS's existence in 1977.
So, still secret operations, but the agency itself was now officially acknowledged.
A major shift. From total denial to, well, admitting it exists.
Then the world changes. The Cold War ends. How does an agency born in that era adapt?
Good question. There were a couple of internal reviews in the early 90s, the Richardson Report, the Hallway Report.
And what did they find? Time for a shakeup.
Interestingly, no. They actually endorsed ASIS's structure and performance, saying it was adapting pretty well to the post-Cold War world.
So it had managed to pivot effectively.
It seemed so, but then came the move to put it on a formal legal footing.
Ah, the Intelligence Services Act 2001, the ISA.
Exactly. This was huge. It made ASIS a statutory body, defined its functions in law, and crucially set limits.
Limits like what?
Big ones, like prohibiting carrying weapons except for self-defense, and basically banning violent or paramilitary operations by ASIS itself.
That sounds like a major constraint for spies operating overseas.
It was. The act also required ministerial directions for activities, specific authorization to collect intel on Aussies with strict rules and set up rules for handling that data, plus parliamentary oversight.
So lots of checks and balances being built in.
Definitely. It was about accountability.
But you said basically banned paramilitary ops, and the weapons ban didn't stick entirely.
Right. Fast forward to 2004. An Amendment Act tweaked things. It allowed operatives to carry firearms again, purely for protection.
Okay, that seems practical.
And it allowed ASIS to work with agencies like the CIA or MI6 in planning paramilitary or violent ops, but still, ASIS couldn't execute them.
So they could help plan, but not pull the trigger, so to speak.
Precisely. It shows that constant push and pull between operational needs and legal boundaries.
It really does. And ASIS has been looked at by, what, 3 royal commissions?
3, yes. The 2 Hope Commissions, and then Samuels and Codd in the mid-90s.
That's a lot of scrutiny.
It is. Although, it's worth noting that the specific ASIS reports from the Hope Commissions are still mostly under wraps.
Right. So even with public acknowledgement, much of the past is still classified. What kicked off Samuels and Codd in '94?
That was mainly down to a Four Corners program.
Investigative journalism stirring the pot again.
You could say that. Former officers made some pretty serious claims that ASIS was unaccountable, maybe holding files on Australians illegally, things like that.
Serious stuff. What did the commission find?
They investigated thoroughly, and, well, they weren't convinced by the Four Corners portrayal. They said the reporting was skewed towards the false and damaged ASIS's reputation.
So not the out-of-control agency it was painted as?
According to Samuels and Codd, no. They found operational management was actually quite well structured. They did find some administrative files, but rejected the idea it was rogue.
But they still made recommendations.
Oh, yes. They reinforced the role of the Inspector General of Intelligence and Security, the IGS for handling complaints, and suggested the Administrative Appeals Tribunal for staff issues. They even drafted a new law for ASIS, though that wasn't made public.
More efforts to tighten oversight.
Exactly, strengthening those mechanisms.
It's been quite the evolution, and along the way, some memorable incidents. Chile in the early 70s sounds like classic Cold War stuff.
It really does. July 71, ASIS sets up shop in Santiago at the request of the CIA.
Seriously? Authorized by?
The Australian Foreign Minister at the time, McMahon. Their job was basically to help the CIA's efforts to destabilize the Allende government, handling CIA assets, filing reports.
So Australia was directly involved in undermining a democratically elected government.
That's what the records suggest. Then Whitlam comes in, finds out in 73, and orders it shut down immediately.
Wait, what?
But there were delays, significant delays,
Yeah.
which led to a major blow-up between Whitlam and the ASIS Director General. The last agent didn't leave until after the coup against Allende.
Wow. That timing is awkward, to say the least.
Extremely. And the full details.
Mhm.
Still classified. Study damage to security, international relations, the usual reasons.
A very murky chapter. And then the Favaro affair in 75, East Timor related?
Yes. ASIS paid an Australian businessman in Dili, Frank Favaro, for intel just before the Indonesian invasion.
Okay.
But his identity got leaked. And that became another flashpoint between Whitlam and the ASIS leadership. Shows the risks, the potential fallout.
Seems like a really tense period between the government and the agency, which brings us to the Sheraton Hotel incident in '83. This one sounds almost comical if it weren't serious.
Oh, it was serious, but also deeply embarrassing. A training exercise, mock surveillance, hostage rescue at a Melbourne hotel.
Okay.
Without telling the hotel.
You didn't get permission?
Nope. They broke down a door, waved weapons around in the lobby, confronted the manager.
You kidding?
Wish I were. Absolute chaos ensued. Police called. ASIS initially obstructed the investigation. The Second Hope Commission called it poorly planned, poorly supervised, and poorly run.
Understatement of the year, maybe?
Quite possibly. It's thought their covert action role got axed, or at least seriously curtailed after that. The hotel got a big payout, a real low point for ASIS's public image.
Unbelievable. Okay, moving geographically, Papua New Guinea in the late 80s, 90s.
Allegations surfaced then, too. Claims ASIS trained PNG troops fighting independence movements in Irian Jaya and Bougainville.
Right.
And later, during the Sandline mercenary affair in Bougainville, questions were raised about whether ASIS failed to get or act on crucial intelligence.
More questions about effectiveness and Australia's role in the region.
Exactly. And we mentioned the '94 Four Corners allegations triggering the Samuels and Codd review. Any other controversies pop up?
There have been others. Around 2000, some awkward questions about potential conflicts of interest involving a journalist, Indonesian intelligence, and a senior advisor to the minister responsible for ASIS.
And internal issues, too.
Yes. In 2005, serving officers went public anonymously, of course alleging mismanagement. Inexperienced agents put on dangerous counter-terror jobs, poor retention, even claims of intelligence being doctored.
That's worrying. If true, that undermines the whole point of the agency.
It certainly raises concerns. And then, more recently, the East Timor spying scandal, 2013.
Ah, yes, the revelation that ASIS bugged the East Timorese government's offices during negotiations over oil and gas treaties.
That caused a massive diplomatic incident, didn't it?
Huge, seriously damaged relations and raised big ethical questions about spying on a friendly, developing nation during sensitive negotiations.
So it's fair to say ASIS has had its share of turbulence. But it's not all controversy, is it? It presumably does vital work, too.
Oh, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
not always in the headlines for the wrong reasons. They provided key intelligence leading to the capture of that rogue Afghan soldier in 2013.
Okay.
They were involved in security and the difficult evacuation during the Kabul airlift in 2021. And they've been involved in anti-people smuggling operations for years now.
So it's an active agency dealing with current threats. What does the structure look like today? Who watches the watchers?
Right now, it sits within the Foreign Affairs and Trade portfolio. The Director General, currently Kerry Hartland, reports to the Foreign Minister, Penny Wong.
And its budget.
Pretty substantial.
Yeah.
Over $840 million for 2023-24.
And oversight.
There's the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security, and crucially, the Inspector General of Intelligence and Security, the IGS. They provide independent scrutiny.
Okay, so we've traced it from deep secret origins through scandals, reforms, royal commissions. What's the big picture here, the main takeaway?
I think the clearest takeaway is just how much ASIS has transformed. From this completely hidden entity to a legally defined agency under, significant scrutiny, its whole history just screams the tension between needing secret intelligence for national security and the demands of transparency and accountability in a democracy.
Yeah, that push and pull seems constant. Every scandal, every review seems to force another adjustment in that balance.
Exactly. And those controversies, while damaging at the time, ultimately push towards greater oversight and clearer rules.
That journey from the shadows into at least partial light, forced by these incidents, that really is the core story, isn't it? The aha moment is seeing how a democracy grapples with having a secret service.
It really is. Which leads to a final thought maybe for you listening. ASIS operates overseas. So how do you think we best strike that balance? Between needing effective spying capabilities and upholding our own values and international law, what role should public awareness and Parliament play in keeping that balance right?
No easy answers there.
None at all, but definitely something worth thinking about in today's world.